morning to everyone. Welcome to the Mobile Phone Data for Policy session. My name is Esperanza Magpantay. I'm the senior statistician from the International Telecommunication Union. So today we are here to walk you through some of the activities that we have related to the use of mobile phone big data for policy. So one of the key activities of the ITU is on ICT statistics, where I'm coming from, and particularly the work that we are focusing on is on the use of mobile phone data for official statistics. So part of this work is developing methodologies and helping countries to implement mobile phone data projects for measurements. For our case, this is for indicator 1781 of the SDG. At the same time, we also collaborate at the international level with other experts that are working on mobile phone big data. And this is through the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics. In this initiative, what we are doing is basically collaborating in developing methodologies, particularly in 6 areas of statistics on population, migration, tourism, transport, disaster context statistics, and information society, all of which are areas where mobile phone big data can be used to complement or supplement existing statistics or data. But today we are going to go deeper into the implementation of mobile phone big data projects and how we help countries uh, use or implement this new data source. This is particularly through the global digital or through the GDF program on using MPD for official statistics and for policy. And this is a partnership that we have through the World Bank with the ITU, also with the government of Spain. And in this program, we are helping around now 20 countries use mobile phone big data, integrate them in their national statistical systems, and at the same time, building their capacities in the use of this new data source. So today we will hear from several experts on how mobile phone big data are used in different areas of statistics and for the use of in policies. And at the same time, we will hear how the GDF MPD program helps countries implement the different projects that are currently undergoing in different countries. So through these different presentations, you will have also a chance to share your insights or questions either through the chat or through the Q&A part of this session. And I think it will be a good opportunity for everyone to learn about these new methods and also to understand how this can be explored in their respective countries or in different areas of statistics to benefit the policies. So with that, I'd like to introduce the different speakers that we have today. We have with us Sveta Milosheva, who is our senior economist from the World Bank. We also have Kathy Riley, who is the director from Flowminder. We have Ms. Bruna Calathans, who is also a director from NOMON, and Mr. Trevor Monroe, who is the senior program manager and who is a co-lead in this GDF program on MPD from the World Bank. So with that, I'd like to pass the floor now to Sveta, who will walk us through with her first presentation to motivate our session this afternoon. Thank you very much, and over to you, Sveta.
Great. Thank you so much. And just to make sure I'm getting something, oh, sorry, just making sure that the language is set to English since it seemed to change. Let me just take control of the presentation. Wonderful. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to start us off. As Esperanza mentioned, my name is Sveta Milosheva. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank. co-leading the Mobile Phone Data for Policy program. And I'm excited to lead us in giving some motivation in terms of how mobile phone data can support UN 2.0. Mobile phone data is an extremely powerful tool that could help us with better policy making. Knowing where people are, how they're moving around is really critical for many of the decisions that policymakers need to make, and to think about how to more effectively target our limited resources to achieve the most and help to accelerate the SDGs. So I'll give a few quick examples of this, and you'll hear more detailed examples in the session today. One of the most powerful ways in which mobile phone data can be used is in the space of disasters. When there is an earthquake, when there is a flood, we need to know where people are right now. Having census data from 10 years ago is not going to give us the information that we need in order to be able to support those in need in those critical moments. But mobile phone data can help us in terms of identifying where people are, how they moved within the country, and where we need to be targeting resources to be able to save the most lives and help the most people in those critical situations. A second area where mobile phone data is extremely useful is in the space of health. We saw during the COVID-19 pandemic how as people move around, that can lead to the spread of a disease. And this is relevant for all infectious diseases. And so if we have better information on how people are moving around, that could help to inform how we may see spread of infectious diseases. And again, governments can then more effectively target their limited resources like vaccines and testing to try to spread the spread of a disease, and also to be able to improve the health of the population overall. Another important area is as we think about creating our sustainable cities, we want to be increasing access for the population. That's where having really detailed information on where people are, where they need to get to, and where the gaps are is really critical for our urban planners in order to know where we need to invest in public transport and what might be needed to ensure that everyone has access to markets and services. Having this type of information is extremely useful. And going beyond mobility, we have found that mobile phone data and indicators that we generate are correlated with other types of outcomes that we're interested in, specifically socioeconomic indicators. This means that we can use mobile phone data combined with other sources of data like geospatial data to help us improve our mapping of, for example, poverty or wealth. And anytime we start with a challenge, having good data on understanding that challenge is really helpful to help us better plan for what policies and interventions are needed. So if we're able to have more detailed information on pockets of poverty or areas where we need to target resources, then governments are able to make more informed decisions in terms of where resources are needed. And finally, when we use that information to, for example, map poverty and we identify those areas where we need to target interventions, we can also use mobile phone data to help with those interventions. We saw during, again, the COVID-19 pandemic, how when we needed to target individuals with cash transfers to help with the economic consequences of that pandemic, we were able to use mobile phone data to more quickly identify who we need to target those cash transfers to, and to then get the resources to the people most in need. And so we can think about how we can use mobile phone data in this way to help support better targeting of social protection programs that could help us then achieve the SDGs. Of course, there's many challenges with working with this data, especially when it comes to access, privacy, quality, and representativeness. But that's where the mobile phone data program is helping countries address those challenges and overcome those challenges, so we can really open up this tremendous opportunity to leverage mobile phone data and to lead to improved policies and better targeting that could help our governments in achieving the SDGs more quickly and more effectively. So with that, I'll pass on to Kathy, who will provide us with a more in-depth example of the use of this data.
Thank you, Sveta. Hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Kathy Riley. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Director at Flowminder Foundation, and we are one of a group of organizations who are supporting the World Bank with their Global Data Facility, leading the delivery of training for national statistical officers, mobile network organizations, and others, including regulators. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen starting mobility data for disaster and preparedness. So I'll talk about how we can use this type of data in humanitarian response, drawing on experiences from Flowminder Foundation in a number of different countries. To begin with, just to set out the disaster management stages and data needs or data gaps in these different stages worth looking at. So you've got at the preparedness stage, being ready and knowing what the situation is with regard to where people ordinarily are, the hazard forecast and warning stages where known hazards are occurring or could be predicted to occur, and helping people to know that those are coming and to encourage them to move or relocate, and understanding how they're responding to things like evacuation orders. You've got an active crisis, a situation developing on the ground immediately, and protracted crises also, where those situations are repeating themselves, as well as the recovery stage in disaster management. And the point of kind of flagging all of these and the different questions you can ask at the different times is this mobile phone data that we're talking about can help to answer a range of different questions about where people are, how are they moving, how they're responding to information they're receiving, etc. And then how they're recovering. So to give you some examples, in Ghana, where we're working with the Ghana Statistical Office and Telecel Ghana, we have been able to do some work looking at the flood exposure risk in the capital city, Accra, looking at movements of population into and out of particularly the CBD area, but also the wider metropolitan areas across the week and over the day. And as you can see, predictably, this sort of central area that's highlighted in pink towards the top there shows an increase in population density during the working week, particularly during the working hours of the day. And that information is highly relevant to an overlay of information regarding things like the potential for flooding risk related to storm surges and sea level rises. So we've been looking at how we can utilize this data to support the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, in preparing for disasters and forecasting what they might look like and how many people might be affected. In terms of hazard warnings, I mentioned evacuation orders earlier. We saw population movements in response to the eruption of a volcano, Mount Nyiragongo in DRC in 2021, and we're able to use mobile phone data we have from Vodacom DRC to understand the movements of people, both in response to the eruption of the volcano itself, which did cause people to flee in panic, and some people's houses were affected, so they were internally displaced, but also subsequently in response to the evacuation orders that were issued as a result by the government to vacate particular areas. So you can use this data to both see how people are responding to a particular disaster, but also how they're responding to information being shared about how they should be behaving and where they should be going. And we saw this as well during COVID, which has been mentioned already before. With regards to information about lockdowns that were about to be imposed, we saw significant movements of the population, both just prior to those events out of urban areas into rural areas, and then an increase in more rural areas and a decrease in mobility in urban areas. During an active crisis of humanitarian response, where there's actually something ongoing, people are trying to respond to a crisis, understanding where people have moved to, who's in need, how you might reach them is critical information. And this data can help with that. This is an example that occurred after a flood in the Lower Volta region of Ghana. This was driven by actually the Okasombo Dam, which is a huge dam on the river there, actually needing to have some overflow occur to protect the dam wall, but that resulted in huge flooding downstream and populations being displaced. one of the pieces of feedback we got from the Disaster Management Agency, who was able to utilize this information, was that populations had moved to places they hadn't detected them in. So in some scenarios, people are moving not just to the main sites where responses are located, but also to other places and sometimes get missed by disaster response actors. So we can look at this data and, for example, we can understand the number of displaced subscribers and then estimate from that the number of people in totality who've been affected and are moving. You can also look at the share of displaced subscribers, and you can also monitor the return of those subscribers back to their home locations over a period of time. Because of the nature of the data and the fact that it flows on a consistent and daily basis, we are able to monitor on a real-time basis what's going on with the movements of populations in response to disaster and subsequently. There is a QR code on this slide, which you're very welcome to go and have a look at. This is a link to a video about Kelly Kekeli from the Disaster Management Agency explaining how he utilized this data as part of their emergency operations, and giving feedback as to how useful it is to understand from data that's at large quantitative scale, this being big data, understanding how those populations are moving in ways that might not be detectable through on-the-ground needs assessments and surveys that get conducted. Another example of how this data can be useful during an active crisis situation is what Sveta mentioned earlier with regard to disease spread modeling. In DRC, quite a few years back now, we were able to do an analysis of where were the zones that were visited by subscribers on the Vodacom DRC network, where were they appearing in Ebola areas, and what were the zones that were visited by subscribers after appearing in those areas. This data is highly valuable for understanding the movement of contagious diseases and therefore targeting the response accordingly. I mentioned protracted crisis earlier. Haiti is a good example of a situation which has experienced a number of different crises. They began with the Haiti earthquake in 2010, for example, and then moved on to having also flood situations, then a further earthquake in 2021, and is now suffering a series of violent conflicts associated with gang violence in the country and the destabilization of the political context. What we're showing here is the rapid decrease in population numbers and what we count as residents in a particular area affected by gang violence in 2022, and the subsequent movements of those populations back to their home locations after a period of time. So this is short-term sporadic movements. But what we're seeing in Haiti is that over time, particularly in Port-au-Prince, which is highly affected by this type of gang violence, there is an overall decline over the past 5 years in the population located in the capital city. Very unusual pattern of population flow out of a capital city. In most capital cities, they're increasing through rural-urban migration and growing over time. The situation in Haiti is the reverse, and we've been able to demonstrate this with the data that we have access to and demonstrate that the regular reductions are cumulatively resulting in the city emptying. And this is also, we're able through this data to demonstrate where are those people going and support the humanitarian actors and the government to understand where should they be looking to provide services, where have people moved to, and also in advance of the hurricane season, where should they be anticipating impact of higher numbers of people than normal because of the movements of people out from the capital city into the southern and northern regions. This is some feedback we received from the World Food Programme's country director at the time, talking about the fact that it was very difficult to understand exactly what was happening in Port-au-Prince, and that this type of data is the first signal he was getting that the population was actually declining within the capital city. Briefly then to talk about the final part of the data, the disaster management cycle. The data that you can have from a mobile phone company can help you to also understand recovery. The top graph here is showing the return rates of people back to Kathmandu after a period of time following the Nepal earthquake in 2015, which resulted in huge outflows from the capital city and other parts of the affected region during that earthquake, lots of people were moving to the south, to the Tarai area, and over a period of time, recovery was seen, but you could also see where recovery was still not quite back to normal figures. Similarly, with the Haiti earthquake, we were able to detect from the data the returns to areas of where people have fled a particular crisis and then slowly but surely move back. So this is helpful for understanding recovery and return rates. That's it from my side for now, and I will hand over to Bruna. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Bruna. I'm the Director of Mobility Analytics of Nomon. We are a Spanish company founded that back in 2012. And mostly our team is based in Spain, but we also have like backup support at UK, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. And we completed over 300 projects using mobile phone data already. We are well positioned on the transport segment. I mean, Kathy just made a wonderful case how we can use those data to see those changes on migrations and also when we have disasters. This is not our specialty. We are usually focused on the mobility part, on the diagnosis of a city, and we also work with transport planners like governments in a basis of a daily basis to continuously monitor the mobility. We also have another projects and products that I don't want to dig deep right now. Just to you guys to understand how we usually work, we have a set of deals with mobile phone operators, and we make some descriptive analysis of this data, and we can also do predictive analysis. So in a sense, we can imagine that a volcano will explode, and using data like Kathy explained, we can maybe predict how people will behave. So this is really useful for authorities, but also for other segments like retails and real estate agencies. But this is not so social. We don't have like the social impact that we want to approach in this talk. Nomon is also involved on the Global Data Facility. We're helping with some trainings, particularly with the data governance and protection and privacy of the security of this data. We help government understand that if you have multi-MNO operators, you can have a better sense of the data. So if you have one particular government that can use more than one operator in this country, you have a more detailed diagnostic of the data. This is really rare. We just had this one experience in Spain with that, when we work with Orange and Vodafone together, and usually we just have contracts with one operator. We can also have we'll talk about some case studies here, okay? Just to make a quick review on the Europe experience, we have a contract with the Ministry of Transportation that we do a continuous mobility analysis. The main objective of these projects is to provide daily information for the authorities of how people move in the whole country. We provide this data with a 3 days gap of because we need to process all the data, and this takes a lot of time. And they have the data up to date for 3 or 4 days. Although we can calculate daily, some indicators we need to expand on a monthly basis. So we also have products that are that we aim to do a more careful analysis. For example, we can analyze how people choose a mode of transportation, and we can have this information for the whole month, and also what route each one choose. So this information, it's really useful for the government so they can allocate better their resources. So they can choose exactly what project they can give budget for a project, seeing how many people are impacted for this project. One application of the recent application of this project was the blackout that happened in April. So I don't know if you guys can see the map moving already. Yes. So here we can see the map of the Spain and how the antennas were like gradually losing signal after the half of the day. And we can see how the country was losing connection, not in a, it wasn't like instantaneously. And for each city, we have a gradually low of the number of connections. And large regions like Madrid, which is here right in the center, Bilbao, Barcelona, they maintain the connection, partially the connection. This is not the total number. Of course, we know that a lot of people didn't have signal, the systems didn't work well that day, but we can have this picture just because we had this project going on, okay? Lastly, in Europe, we have a project with the Statistic Européen that we are building a model to calculate and frame indicators on a global level to manage to compare those indicators for each country. Okay, so it was a big project, 2.5 years building this model. This is a project that involved more than one operator, so adds a complexity of the project. At the end of the project, we are delivering synthetic data sets, so people can have access to these data sets, and they are artificial data sets, but it helps one to understand the power that we have with the data, because we can simulate how we can calculate those indicators and compare those indicators between countries. We are also providing input and output data components, so people can compare it and use it as they feel well. It's an open data project. The methodology, how we calculate each indicator is open. Also, the code is open. So this is all the initiatives that we are taking on in Europe with the support of World Bank and the government of Spain to help everyone to understand how important it is to use mobile phone data to track the mobility. Crossing the ocean, I would like to bring experiences on Latin America, which where I'm from, so I'm sorry for my broken English. So this is just a framework of the normal experience. Of course, we know that are many projects that goes along in other countries. So I'm just painting the countries that we have experienced. Okay, we see a highly heterogeneous region because each country has a different level of maturity, and we also see a different level of maturity inside the country. This means that we have the public sector and the private sector, and sometimes the private sector is more inclined to use innovative methodologies, and we see that usually they are inclined to use it first, and the governments are more precautious. So it's important that we understand this when we are dealing with our clients, and to explain also the limitations of the methodology, because especially in transport planning, we are used to work with a methodology that it's only based on surveys, so the results it always be different. So we need to explain to them the limitations of methodologies and of the data. I list the countries based on the maturity. We see Brazil and Colombia more mature. We have more projects going on those countries, and Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. They are kind of on the same ramp. I mean, they are until taking assessment of the information and trying to understand how to use the data. We need to also understand the economic constraints of those countries and take these economic constraints to our advantage in the sense that when we have the traditional methodology, that we have surveys that are really expensive to do, that we need to do for every 10 years, this is not an efficient way to spend our money. So I think one takeaway that I would like to bring is that we need to explain that investing in mobile phone data, it's a way to spend well this money, because we have more data, we have more information, more qualified information that we are ever used to. And although we have to understand the limitations and adjust our methods to really see the data, it's a good choice to do this one. So I will stop talking and just bring the use case right now. We had one really important project that we conducted with the Banco Nacional, and we provided indicators for 21 metropolitan regions in Brazil. It was really quick study that we wish that we could do it with more calm, because the client was really pressing on us. So it was like exploratory project that we provide just simple indicators like how many people move from A to B. So it's a really interesting project, but it doesn't deliver all the potential that we can get from mobile phone data. So another project that we was developing more or less at the same time, it was a similar project, but for the Secretaria Municipal of Salvador, which is a big city in Brazil, on the northwest coast, like 2 million inhabitants. That we have the Carnaval there. It's a big party that happens for the whole week and movements the whole city and also other parts of Brazil. So we did the same as we did for the Banco Nacional of the 21 cities, but here we have special segmentations to study the mobility, which means that we know how many people go from A to B, but we also know the gender, the age, their income, what time they go, what time they arrive, and the modal split, where we applied machine learning technique to understand which mode each person chose to do their trip. So this is a really powerful set of information that we gave for their authority to plan not only their mobility, their standard mobility, because we gave them indicator for a standard month, but also for this party Carnaval that happens and changes how the city behaves. And we have like parties at night, people going at night, a lot of closed streets. So this is really important too. Another project that goes now leaving the urban center and going for the middle of the forest. Colombia and Brazil, great part of those two countries are covered for the Amazonian forest, rainforest. So it's a really hard region to assess. And we have little urban centers spread out this forest. So it's really hard to understand how people move there. Conducting a survey would be impossible. So we use mobile phone data to understand how people move by air, by road, and also by river. And for this project, we also did an adaptation of our standard methodology, because when we think of a normal city, or even in Europe especially, we think just on displacements that happens along the day. So if I have to travel, usually I leave today and I will arrive at my destination in the same day. So we have a big distance to cover. Usually the river is totally messy to go along, and also the roads. So most part of the trips happens not most part of the trips, but the long trips happens on 2 or 3 days. So this was a special project that we also conducted with the help of World Bank Group. So the last one, this is another example of continuous monitoring the mobility in a sense. It wasn't continuous for a whole year, but we did study 3 periods of the time. We studied prior COVID, during, and post-COVID in 3 cities, Buenos Aires, Bogota, and Medellin. But then later on, we also did another extension for Asunción in Paraguay. And the main takeaways of these projects was to see how was the mobility, how people behave during the pandemic. If you see this chart, I don't know if you can point. So this is the how many trips leaves, and this is the hours of the day. And we see the COVID, and in yellow we have COVID. We don't see the usual peaks that we see in the morning and in the afternoon, and how it went before COVID. We didn't reach the levels of travels that we had prior to the pandemic. And also we did the model split of all the cities using machine learning techniques. So in the left, we have the results for research, and on the right is just a comparison with the survey that we had to compare the results. So we see that the results is the model split didn't change a lot, because this is quite a recent survey. So if I have time for key takeaways, I think I have 3 more minutes. Like I said, we have different levels of maturity for those countries in LATAM, which was my main goal to bring to the conversation, especially at the public sector, that we are working on bringing more information with this event, and also with the global facility, and conducting webinars that we can talk with the government. We see they want to understand more, but we still have a lot of work to do. We also have work to do with the afterwards. Maybe they already know the importance of using mobile phone, but after the delivering, they are quite a bit lost what to do with this data. Colombia and Mexico now we see that are warming up the environment, and I just want to notice that Chile kind of stands out for the low number of projects. For what we can see, Chile, it's a really traditional country. The classical methodology of transportation comes from the University of Chile, and I don't know if it's for that or not, but I think it's nice to talk about it. And the conclusion is we need more training. We need to keep talking about mobile phone data so we can boost the use of this information. As you can see, we have a lot of applications. Thank you, Trevor. I think it's our turn.
Thank you, Bruna. So just want to remind everyone, some of you have found the Q&A feature. You can post questions at any time, and then we'll take questions following this presentation. So it is my pleasure to talk about the Global Data Facility Mobile Phone Data Program. This is a joint partnership between the World Bank, the ITU, and the government of Spain, which is really a leader in the use of mobile phone data in the public sector. So the Global Data Facility Mobile Phone Data Program delivers programmatic support. It's currently supporting 30 plus countries in our cohorts. And our goal is to get these countries to integrate mobile phone data for everyday use into their national data systems. We have two pillars. Our operations pillar works with parts of the bank that does a lot of the grant making and lending in integrated national data systems or public data infrastructure. So we support cohorts, and I'll talk more about our cohort approach, but cohorts of country teams to implement a set of activities, because it really does take several activities to get these mobile phone data pipelines and policy applications or statistical data products up and running. Everyone in our cohort has access to basic foundations training, and this is led by Flowminder in partnership with Nomen and some other organizations like Positium and the University of Tokyo. The program also provides essential resources, and I provided a link in the Q&A to a repository of the content and guidelines, frameworks, use cases that we use in our trainings and program. We also have a research pillar that works on innovation and methods and standards at scale. Sveta Malusheva leads that pillar, who you heard from earlier, and we have a world-class board of partners on that from universities that help with that research. So I think the question is why invest in mobile phone data if you're a country or organization? When it comes to national statistical offices, particularly following the pandemic, mobile phone data was a priority in the coming years for about 70 to 80% of national statistical offices. We've seen this in several surveys. We've also seen countries that are really getting the hang of using this mobile phone data. They've set up their pipelines and they're using it not just for one, but multiple use cases. And when they do make these investments and they do have the capacity in place, that's when things really get more cost effective. Sometimes you can see more than twice the value in using mobile phone data compared to conventional approaches, or much faster response times. And obviously this doesn't happen overnight, but there are economies of scope as countries get better at using mobile phone data. So our cohort-based support program has a structured approach. So even though most country experiences are different, a lot of them share similarities. So we use a maturity framework from pre-foundation to practitioner and expert. And you have kind of a journey, a typical journey that starts at the bottom of this slide and goes to the top. But typically, countries will start out by assessing the maturity level, kind of understanding where they're at, and then developing these partnerships and collaborations with the key stakeholders in the local mobile phone data ecosystem. So the mobile network operators, obviously, the regulators, ICT, telco regulators, data protection authorities, the National Statistics Office, and other governments and departments that are involved in this. But primarily, the big three are the regulators, the operators, and the national statistical organizations. So from there, they start to set up their data partnerships to access the data and to formalize the memorandums of understanding, the data sharing agreements, other service level agreements. They're involved to formalize the pipeline. A lot of the countries need to set up the infrastructure on the premise of the mobile network operator or otherwise. It could be on the government premise or a third party to process the data. There needs to be technical capacity locally, data scientists, data engineers, economists that can turn the raw data, aggregate it, anonymize it, make sure to do the quality checks, and use the algorithms to make the data product, statistical product, for example. Some countries, as I mentioned, will go on from there. They may start with a basic, dynamic population measurement and move into tourism or disaster response data products. And as they do this, they get better and better. So the marginal costs go down. They get more cost effective at using this data, and the value goes up. We work with our partners because there are bigger grants. Our Global Data Facility does provide startup kind of grants to kind of get this process going, but there are additional funds available through the World Bank to help to integrate this data into the national data system and mainstream it for multiple MNOs, multiple policy use cases. So currently, we're supporting 2 cohorts. Our first cohort was just launched basically last October, November. So those teams, there are 18 of them in LAC, in Africa, in parts of Asia that are currently implementing their grants. Some of these are at the pre-foundation level. Others you can see are working on tourism or transport applications, migration, and others. We just launched our second cohort. So we had our launch workshop in May in the South Africa Development Community. So those 16 member states gathered for a 4-day workshop. They developed their action plans. Later this month, a window will open. They'll submit their proposals, and some of those countries will be selected for implementation of activities from 12 to 18 months. And in this case, we've also partnered with a bigger World Bank SADC operation, so that can also provide further technical assistance as countries kind of meet their goals and they advance their maturity levels. So that's the first 2 cohorts. One feature that we have, if countries are successful and they meet their goals, so if a pre-foundation country meets their goal and they get to the point where they're about ready to sign an MOU or data partnership agreement, they're able to apply for top-up funding. Likewise, if a country gets to that practitioner level and they want to go to additional policy use case, they can apply for top-up funding through the Global Data Facility within that implementation period, which is basically 18 to 24 months. So we've budgeted for that on average countries to meet those goals. We launch our second cohort. They have their implementation period, and any unused top-up budget would roll over into the cohort 3. So we're currently, raising funds and mobilizing partnerships for cohort 3. So there's time to get on board for that. That is likely to happen sometime a year from now or so. And following that, there will be another cohort, and this hopefully will get towards our goal of getting 20 or so countries with fully integrated mobile phone pipelines into their national data systems by 2030. So an important thing, this program really had to work with partners from the beginning. So Nomen, Flowminder, Zitium, University of Tokyo, all of our training providers, we worked on our frameworks, our content. We had to work together. Now the country teams, they work together on the journey. And there's a lot of effort that needs to be involved to get the collaborations and data partnerships in place. And there's a considerable effort that needs to be developed in local capacity. But they need to do it together. And it really is true that this program needs to work together with partners. The country teams need to work together across agencies and with public-private collaborations. So if you would like to reach out, I encourage you to do so through our email address, which is gdfmpd@worldbank.org. And with that, we have some time for questions. I think we are able to, you can post those in the chat. And let's see, we can probably allow the mic use. And I'm going to call, I think it's Fran, to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. I may have gotten the name wrong.
I think they cannot unmute. No?
Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. I apologize if you hear a little background noise. My name is Fran Francisco, and this was just really interesting what you shared. And I just have a few questions. First, you mentioned how the implementing mobile data could save $30 for every $1. Can you explain more like how that works, why they're saving that money? And then can you go a little more? You touched on it briefly, but can you go more in detail? Because there's a lot of countries that don't have the infrastructure, like to collect the data, because they just don't have their citizens aren't able to collect the data because they don't have the infrastructure. So how do you work with countries who don't even have the data or infrastructure, especially in rural areas?
Great. Thanks for the question, Fran. And others, looks like there's some in the Q&A potentially. If I can ask my colleague Sveta also to take a look at that. So really good question. So the $30 to 1, that came from actually it was a study produced by the Global Partnership on Sustainable Development Data in collaboration with the World Bank. And it's really looking at integrated national data systems. So it's not necessarily mobile phone data in particular on the 30 times, but that's on average what they found as these countries are able to modernize their statistical systems and use more data in an integrated fashion, that they were able to achieve those economies of scope and scale as they use mobile phone data. What we're seeing with countries like India is they may start with a disaster or a tourism product, and they realize that there's considerable savings there. Then they gradually grow their pipeline, they add additional operators, their capacity gets a little bit better, and they're able to apply that to disaster response. And now they're working on a third application. So it's really context dependent, country dependent. You mentioned the infrastructure. Our program is here to help address some of those issues, but potentially some of my colleagues at Kathy or Bruno want to come in on that.
Sure. I mean, I would say that the data is actually being collected and stored by the mobile network operators who hold the data privately, and you need to negotiate access to that data. They do have access to this data because they're producing it for billing purposes. That's why it gets generated, at least the call detail records that FlowMinder ordinarily processes. Sometimes you get other data like ping data or signaling data. Depends on their capacity to store and for how long, whether you can use that data for this type of analysis. But the point is the mobile network operators have it. You're right to say that in some country contexts, the National Statistical Office, for example, wouldn't necessarily have the resources to store that data. So the conversation around using this data needs to discuss this and agree and figure out how the infrastructure will be developed to both produce the aggregated data, because you don't usually share or pass on the individual level, obviously, for privacy reasons. There's a conversation to be had between the partners who want to be involved in these projects. How will that data be processed? How will it be stored? And where will the infrastructure and hardware and software come from and be resourced? But it's happened in Haiti, Ghana, and DRC, at least on our projects, and we've resourced that with external funding.
Great. Bruna, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add, because he also mentioned the rural areas. I don't know if he was saying regarding the storing the data of the access itself. Regarding the access, it's true that on the rural areas, we don't have a lot of coverage, or we have less antennas. This is just goes in the way that I was telling, we need to be transparent regarding the limitations. So, for example, for rural areas, we cannot conduct urban study. Of course, it's a rural area, but I mean, for the Amazon project, as I showed, we gave indicators of travels between cities. So this we can do because it's a kind of a rural area where we don't have a lot of connection. But if we are in a big city of 2,1,500,000 inhabitants, we can have a well set of indicators of how people move within the city. So just to make this differentiate those use cases.
There was a question in the Q&A by Victoria.
Yes. If I can take on that, Victoria is asking me about the publicity of data of Spain, for example, and if we have plans to extend that for Latin American countries. The project with Spain, it was a project with the ministry that they launched a bid process, that normal one. It's just that, but we have other examples of that happening already in Latin America. They're not for, it's just to understand well the question. The data is accessible for research, but it's the data already processed, okay? It's not the MNO data, the raw data, as Katie explained, for the MNO raw data, this is just like, we have the hash of the user, but we can share this information. So what we do share is the indicator calculated. This is open. You can use it for research or for studies or anything that you want. For Latin America, we have open right now, for example, that I know one initiative at São Paulo, and I also know that they are trying to do in Minas Gerais. Those are just 2 states of Brazil. It's a project that it's open for bidding. It's not an ongoing project yet.
Okay, thank you, Bruna. We're going to take maybe 2 more questions before we have to wrap. But Alice Scher has asked in the chat, are there any plans for expanding the partnership on mobile phone data initiative in Central Asia, including Uzbekistan? Boy, I sure hope so. We were just walking the halls, and one of our colleagues who's in digital transformation in the World Bank is moving to Uzbekistan to lead that initiative, and she is very keen to see what they can do in mobile phone data. There are other countries in Central Asia that have reached out, so beyond those that are in the cohort. So in the cohort, we have Kazakhstan, we have Mongolia, I think Kyrgyzstan, and possibly even one other in Central Asia has reached out, indicating some interest. So we sure hope so. The next cohort opportunity will be in 2026. So we certainly would encourage more participants from Central Asia, from South Asia, from all over the globe. Great. So I do not see any other questions in the chat. Let me just ask my colleagues if there's anything to add. And otherwise, if we don't see a question, well, colleagues, anything before we break?
Maybe just to flag one of the first questions, which it was answered in the chat, but also for those that maybe are not reading the chat, there was a really important question around access to data and the fact that MNOs are potentially reluctant to share this type of data. And so how to tackle that challenge. And that is, I think, really central in terms of being able to work with this type of data is identifying a partnership. And there's different models for doing that. Kathy provided a few examples and resources in the chat, so I would encourage everyone to take a look at those. But I think, sort of thinking about what model works in each country will depend on the specific MNO and what might be the best strategy in that context, in terms of whether incentivizing financially, whether potentially supporting with technical support and other methods. But we are finding MNOs, I think, to become more open to working with us. And I think the more countries that start to do this, we're actually going to see a wave of MNOs kind of potentially even coming forward wanting to be part of this. And so I think that's really the goal, is that, through this, we're starting a movement where this is becoming more standard, and we're able to form these partnerships much more quickly and more effectively. So we'll see where we are, and if we present at UN 2.0 week next year, hopefully we'll see even more advancement. But again, I would encourage everyone to also check some of the resources that Kathy provided in the chat.
Thanks, Svet. It truly is an exciting time to be in the business of mobile phone data for policy. I want to thank my wonderful partners, Kathy Riley, Esperanza Macpantai, Sveta Malushva, and Bruna Calazans. That was a great, wonderful presentation. We always appreciate doing these things. We really want to thank the audience for your time and participation. Please do reach out to our email address if any questions, or if you want to indicate interest in a future cohort. We would really appreciate crossing paths in the future. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Trevor. I'm going to